morning. Andy Taylor from Cubic Transportation Systems. Originally, I'm based in Washington, DC, originally from Wolverhampton, so it's quite nice to actually sort of hear West Midlands is sort of leading the way on mobility as a service. I can't think of another name apart from mobility as a service. The only thing that comes to mind is magical mobility, but I'm pretty sure that's not a catch-on either, so we'll have to work on that when I get back to you. So I just wanted to sort of set the scene really, why we're all talking about mobility as a service. And we've mentioned some of these key issues so far, the issues of urbanization. We're already finding that more of the population is living in the urban areas than living in rural areas. That's only going to increase. I think it's forecast 65% by 2040. That's what the United Nations think. And that's putting extra pressure on the infrastructure in cities and the transportation networks. We've got sort of big demographic shifts as well, increasing populations, the aging population, people are living longer, and people are actually choosing to live in the cities longer as well. We mentioned yesterday about, using price as a metric to keep people out of sort of rural Hertfordshire and living in country cottages. Well, people are actually sort of opting to be in the cities for longer now. And of course, millennials coming through. They're really opting as well for shared mobility solutions and not actually having their own sort of public transportation. They're more interested in using sort of on-demand sort of activities. There's less and less of the millennials actually getting their driving license. And that's a trend that sort of we're seeing across the whole of Europe and North America as well. And then climate change, most people, except for a few people in Washington, DC, really think climate change is a big issue. So it's a case of people are quite aware of their impact on sort of transportation and mobility. There's bigger awareness of everything that we're doing and how that impacts on sort of the transportation footprint that's on the environment. And then finally, technology. It's like most of us have all got a smartphone. And we're starting to expect these on-demand services all the time. You no longer have a movie library, you have access to Netflix. You no longer have a music library, you've got Deezer and Spotify and Pandora, or whatever they are over here as well. So it's a case of people want that sort of on-demand technology. And personalization. There's so much information out there. There's so many options. You don't want time to actually sort of filter them all out yourself. You want what you want delivered to you fairly seamlessly and quickly via whichever sort of AI technology you're using this week, be it Cortana or Siri or Alexa. And then when we look at sort of the transportation issues, the specific ones that were sort of really key to driving mobility as a service forward. So the cost of car ownership and sort of actually operating a car is increasing rapidly. The fuel, the road user charging, parking, the actual insurance and tax with it. And then the sort of the rise of autonomous vehicles, and people are starting to question how autonomous vehicles is going to impact on car ownership going forward as well. And that's even filtering down to people making decisions about buying cars for the future. We're starting to see better multimodal integration, sort of being able to integrate sort of the metro system and the buses and the trains and sort of sharing schedule information and coordinating schedules. That's sort of really driving sort of interconnectivity. But we're not seeing great integration to date on public and private transportation integration. So we're not seeing the Lyfts and Ubers being integrated into the public transportation. And then insight. Insight's an interesting one. From a user perspective, you want to know exactly what's going on. You want to know how you're sort of going to be traveling through the environment. But from an agency perspective, if I've got on a bus, I know where I got on. I don't really know where I got off either, from an agency perspective. From a train operator, I know where I got on and where I got off. And from an Uber driver's perspective, I know where I picked you up and where you dropped you off. But nobody knows what the complete journey is. And until you actually can understand what the complete journey is, that A to B, you don't really understand the why of the journey, why somebody's making that journey. And only when you understand the why of the journey is when you can start to really tailor those services to everybody's specific individual needs and maybe start shifting people's patterns and influencing the way that they want to travel. So the traveler of tomorrow, we see somebody who is heavily into the sort of shared mobility, where sort of usage of a facility trumps actual possession, where you just need ownership. You don't need ownership, you just need access to sort of a facility. So this is what we see as the culture of a shift of a culture from me to a culture of we. It's a case of I don't need to own it, We all need to have access to it. So what does that mean for cities that we've been talking to? It's about sort of bringing together integrated intelligent transportation systems, and that includes both public and private solutions. It's about integrating the payments as well, so you don't have to worry about, my 18 different accounts, and every time my MasterCard number changes, I've got to go in and log in another 18 MasterCard numbers. It's about using real-time information to sort of make those journey planning options. And it's about connecting to the actual traveler through their sort of smartphone solution. And that gives us the magical mobility, as we'll call it now. It gives you this sort of end-to-end journeys. It allows you to sort of really plan from front door to destination. It solves some of that first mile, last mile issues that sort of Laura mentioned about, it takes me from somewhere I don't want to start off to somewhere I don't want to end up. It's about sort of integrating public and private transportation. It's about sort of coordinated journey planning using real-time passenger information. And it's about using what we call holistic preferred and optimal solutions. Holistic in that it's going to get you from your front door to where you want to be. Preferred in that it gives you the options as to, do you want the quickest, the most economic, the most environmentally friendly, the most scenic options that you want. And optimal solutions based on the fact of, what's the situation on the transportation network that day, at that time, in that weather conditions, at that particular sort of time of the day? Is it a Friday before a bank holiday weekend? So how is that going to impact on all the solutions? So a solution that you get one Friday might not be the same the solution you get the next Friday, because it's looking and planning and trying to understand the nuances of your travel. And then again, coordinated through a single account solution. So this is our sort of definition of MaaS, about the integration of public and private transportation networks within a given region, providing all of the sort of preferences to your solutions and then paying for it as a single charge. We see this as mobility as a service. If we can get to this, then we can go down the contract model where you can sign up for your monthly fees of what you want to do. If we can get to the contract fees, it means we've achieved this. And achieving this will get more people buying into using public transportation and intelligent mobility. So how is it going to impact travel? It's going to put everybody else in charge. It's going to put the user in charge. You're going to be in charge of your own mobility. It's going to give you the power to sort of make informed decisions about, which options you actually want to pick. It's going to give you the ability to sort of combine modes. It's going to use real-time information. So the information you do actually see on your sort of mobile phone screen will actually be accurate information. So if it does say that there's an UberX available in 4 minutes, there will be one there in 4 minutes. If it says it's going to take you 91 minutes to walk, it's fairly accurately going to take you 91 minutes to walk. So it's giving you that information, allowing you, the user, to sort of make the judgment on how you want to travel that day. What's missing now from this particular app is a buy now button. And that will give you the mobility as a service. It's a case of let's hit that button now, and then the back office will go off and order your Uber, get your ticket on the metro, reserve your bike share, and do everything that you need to sort of, make that journey actually happen. So from the mobility as a service perspective, you're going to be able to sort of plan all of your journey in real time, use both integrated public and private transportation solutions. You're going to be able to sort of book and reserve the tickets as well. And then the system will basically do all of those reservations for you. And it's not easy by any stretch of the imagination. If you start looking at the concept of bike share, if you want to integrate bike share into it, there's not many solutions nowadays where you can actually reserve a bike share at some of the bike share facilities. So that would have to change as well. I don't want to get to the end of an hour-and-a-half journey expecting to find a bike and one not being there. And then when you're actually traveling, it's about sort of reviewing your progress. It's about sort of matching you up to the journey that you actually paid for. And at the same time, giving you sort of that feedback, that in-journey alerts, the ability to sort of plan and change your mind as you actually go, putting you in complete control of your mobility. So why is that going to make a difference? So what we've seen in a lot of the solutions that we provide globally is whenever we add a transit agency to a card payment solution. So for example, we do the Oyster card in London. We do the Clipper card in San Francisco in the Bay Area. And there are 33 agencies on that Clipper system. And every time that we add an agency, we don't just see the additional ridership from that agency on top of the new ridership for the Clipper card. We always see a delta. There's always an increment on top of that as well. And what we see that increment being is we've just removed a lot of friction from people actually moving through that environment. We've sort of taken the ambiguity out of how you move from A to B. We've suddenly opened it up to people that they don't need to worry about, have I got the right change, or do we need a new card, or do they take contactless cards? It's a case of you just tap and you go. And removing that uncertainty means we see an increase in ridership. Then you get to a lack of trust in planning data. If you use sort of Google Maps sometimes, it's a case of it only uses schedule information. It's the information that it has available to itself. Whereas if you use real-time information and you continue to provide accurate updates to people, people buy into that information. We have a system called NextBus, which basically can tell you within seconds when a bus is going to arrive at the bus stop outside. So if you're waiting for the number 5 bus, it will tell you that there's one due in 45 seconds, which is, allows you to sort of really plan with some certainty when you need to leave the building or when you need to get there. It's not scheduled information. So on Tuesday when I arrived and it was horizontally raining and 25-mile-an-hour winds, I don't want to be standing at that bus stop for 15 minutes waiting for a bus. I'd rather just dash out at the last minute and get it. So having that real-time information is critical to people buying into this mobility as a service solution. And then it comes down to simplicity in booking and execution. It's a case of, I don't want to have to go through page after page after page of iPhone applications. Just pick a route, hit the button and go. It's that simple service and that as a service model that people expect. And what we've seen from the one payment solutions and the real-time information is that drives up ridership. And if you drive up ridership, you're going to drive up revenue. If you drive up revenue, you're able to reinvest in the services that you're offering, increase the sort of service coverage that you have, and continue to sustain a good public transportation network that is integrated throughout the whole urban area. And when I say urban, obviously the big city focus is the way to go, and urbanization shows that where the majority of the population is, but mobility as a service can actually serve the rural populations as well. If you look at some of the on-demand services now, we can actually start using those to connect people in rural environments into the transportation networks and beyond. So the question about hype, would it ever happen? Yes, we can see all of these individual components work. And yes, it works in different parts of the world, and Helsinki is a great example of why it could work, but Helsinki's got a fantastically encapsulated little tiny microcosm that it's going to work in. So why is it going to work? So I was sort of thinking around the transportation domain, and there's a company that you might have heard of called Expedia. So little tiny company. So when you go and book a flight on Expedia, it gives you the flight. And then it gives you the option of booking your hotel. And then it gives you the options of booking your transfers. And then it gives you the options of insurance. And then it gave me the option of, did I want to go to Harry Potter World or whatever it's called, or Legoland? And then it allows me to book and pay for that all with one button. I just click and I've bought it, and everything else is sorted out for me. It's a simple solution for organizing large-scale transport, large-scale journey planning. And then when I actually started the journey, it's giving me information all the time. It's 24 hours to check in. The weather in Milton Keynes is horizontal rain and 25 miles an hour. The train is delayed from Heathrow up to sort of Milton Keynes. So it's keeping me informed and it's keeping me in the loop. So Expedia is an example of a platform that is delivering mobility as a service, but on a macro scale. All we've got to do is sort of squash that down to the urban environment, make it a bit more real time, and I think we're going to have magical mobility or mobility as a service, whatever we're going to call it from now on. So just to sum up, we can see more and more people are using public transportation. There are benefits to the incremental elements, that functionality within mobility as a service, which is really going to drive people to stay using mobility as a service. But people are looking for these new models and ways to deliver those new models as easy and as best as they can. That's it. Thanks very much.